Talk about consumer devices. We have been getting lots of information about how the signals are going to be transmitted and what the broadcaster's going to do, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to receive this. And so we want to talk about that. First thing I want to say is I want to thank all of our panelists who are really top notch. We have John Fairhurst from Samsung down here at the end. And then we have Bonnie Beeman. She's from Airwaves TV, and you probably have not heard of her company, but that's because she's small now, but she's working on getting bigger, and she actually has an ATSC 3.0 receiver. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then we have John Taylor from LG. And my name is Myra Moore, and I'm with Digital Tech Consulting. So, the first thing I want to say is that we are in early days when it comes to consumer devices. I think earlier today we heard 2020 as the year that we will see consumer devices here in a significant way, especially TVs. And and we have
a water boy.
We have a water boy. You know, every panel should have a water boy. Yes, thank you. So, the first thing I want to do, I want to start off by asking, basically, down the line, what devices do you have now or are in your labs, you've got on board, that are going to be consumer receivers? And tell us a little bit about what kind of receivers they are. We know TVs are in the mix, but there's a lot more to this than just televisions. So,
yeah, so we have Samsung. We have TVs in the market right now, prototype TVs. So if you go to Phoenix or Santa Barbara, Cleveland, a number of the test stations, we do have them out. And of course, we do have production televisions in Korea today and have for a few years. So, but they're just prototypes. We're doing the testing, getting things ready so that we can release real TVs to the market in the future.
Right, but in South Korea, you already have a commercial market. Those are out, and they're a little different than what they'll be here in the United States. But
absolutely, yeah, that was an earlier version of the standard that was completed and then deployed in South Korea. ATSC continues to work on it, expanding the features, refining some things, and so of course the new TVs need to conform to the new version of the U.S. standard.
Yeah, okay. And Bonnie?
Hi, my name is Bonnie Beeman. I'm the CEO and founder of Airwaves TV. We're a small startup out of Seattle, and we have a ATSC 3 and ATSC 1 receiver in the market called Red Zone Receiver. And if you want to know what it looks like, it's on that train that's in the middle of the demo back there. It's riding around on a train to show you that ATSC 3 as a television standard is now portable. So you can watch it while moving. And so our dongle is on that train, and that's available today at redzonereceiver.tv. If you go to redzonereceiver.tv, you'll see that. And at the show here, we're announcing support for Windows. And we will have follow-on products that are all portable. We're all about mobile ATSC 3. That's our goal for ATSC 3.
Okay, and Mr. Taylor?
LG's story is very similar to my friend from Samsung in terms of our involvement in the early trials here in the United States and our experience in Korea. We are working hard now to develop the US versions of 4K UHD TVs with ATSC 3.0 tuners to introduce next year. It's not like starting from scratch. If you look at the products that are on the market today with, in our case, Dolby Atmos sound, which is like the immersive sound that you're going to get from ATSC 3.0, and HDR capabilities, and the smart TV capability that we've had for many years. All these things are kind of coalescing and are going to come together with this new broadcast standard. So we're very excited to build on all of the things are in the marketplace today, and that leads to another kind of device that we're not really making, but we're selling a lot of chips. These dongle receivers like Bonnie and others are making. It's going to be a great way for the legacy sets out there to be able to receive ATSC 3 signals rather quickly. But our main focus is on integrated TVs for 2020.
So one of the things I wanted to ask about, we're talking about TVs and about PC dongles, but what is your opinion about kind of what the hybrid broadband device future is? We have big companies like Amazon and Roku that actually have boxes with ATSC1 receivers in them so that consumers can watch over the air and then also get their broadband services. What do you see as the future for ATSC3 in that kind of device?
Well, you really should ask them. But if they're building 1.0 in there, then it makes perfect sense to build 3.0 in there. Of course, we'd prefer that consumers buy a new television set.
Of course you would, yes. And Bonnie?
So we're all about mobility with ATSC3. I'll just reiterate that we're looking at ATSC3 as a brand new packet data network. And if you think about packet data, you'll think about wireless. So think about ATSC3 just like a wireless network. It's a packet data network, and we're all about mobility. So we really think that if you have a mobile phone that's got wireless access, we want to make sure that you can get ATSC3 on that phone.
Yeah, I think John made a great point about the every place you see a 1.0 tuner today, you will see a 3.0 tuner eventually. So that's easy because we know the business model works. And what's interesting, as Bonnie just mentioned, is because it's an IP-based system, it can do some interesting new things as well. So we know where TV works today, and we're going to see where it works tomorrow if there's some additional revenue opportunities, additional business models.
I just wanted to touch on the Korea market just for a second. I know we talked about it a little bit, but I do wonder how much of a blueprint can the Korean TV market be for the U.S. market. I mean, I know in South Korea, ATSC 3.0 receivers are in, I think, all of the 4K UHD televisions from the major vendors. I know, yeah, we're talking to LG and Samsung here. So, and I know there's a difference in, some of the technology. There's a different audio compression technology that's used. But how do you see the transfer of those kinds of sets into our market?
Yeah, there's one difference, which is when 4K TVs came out, it was at the same time as the ATSC 3.0 is available. So in Korea, it's just known as 4K. So it's not really this 4K with this tuner and that 4K TV with this other tuner. It's just a 4K TV. So we're going to have a difference in that we've got 4K TVs, we've got 8K TVs in the market today, and so it's a new service, well, except it's the existing service from the broadcasters, but it's new features from the existing broadcasters and the new capabilities of the future. So marketing it here will be very different than how we marketed it in Korea, in that it's not just 4K. And I think part of it is, yeah, you'll be able to get HDR and higher quality audio and so forth in the US.
Just a little background for those of you who are not aware of the launch of what we call UHD in Korea, which is, as John said, the ATSC3. This is actually, the Korean government actually adopted ATSC3 before the FCC, actually in the summertime of 2017, in preparation for the 2018 Olympics last January, a year ago. And this was a strong push by the Korean government in collaboration with the research labs in Korea and the major manufacturers, and most importantly with the broadcasters. In Korea it's a little simpler. There's basically three major broadcasters, KBC, MBC, and SBS. They're all on board and they're all moving this forward. And to your question, Myra, I think the experience that the Korean broadcasters have had getting on the air, they're not just doing 4K, they're doing advanced emergency alerting, they're working on mobility, they're doing some really interesting interactive things. The ATSC board has visited Korea several times, and as recently as 6 months ago, to meet with the broadcasters and learn from best practices, and all of these things are going to help our transition here. And from a product standpoint, when you think all of the 4K sets on the market in Korea are ATSC 3 today, but if you look at there's still quite a few 1080p sets on the market. So,
Right.
But over half of the sets sold in Korea today have ATSC 3 tuners, and I should add dual tuners, ATSC 1 and ATSC 3. That experience for those of us who are gearing up for production here, building more chips, driving down the cost curve, is going to be beneficial in the U.S.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point about driving down the cost curve, because when something comes onto the market for the very first time, it's the very most expensive it will ever be. And of course, in the TV business, it doesn't take long for for the prices to go down. But the point is well taken that the chips are developed. That's been kind of shaven off of the high initial costs, and so it sounds like a pretty positive transition from one market to the other. Any other comments on?
One comment is, if you look back at 1.0, it took a while to get the tuners into the TVs. It was very expensive because we're going from simple analog tuners to these first highly integrated digital decoders. So very, very expensive and difficult to do. And then we had, in fact, to spur things along, the FCC made a tuner mandate that was size-based, started with the larger TVs and then worked its way down. I don't think we'll need that this time. If you look at the amount of processing we have in our phones, in our smart televisions today, this isn't quite the leap that going from analog to digital was in the past. So yeah, I think it'll be much easier.
Okay, good. Well, I want to turn back to mobile again, because one of the things about the ATSC 3.0 standard is that it does much more than 1.0, and there are many features and services, and of course mobile is one that a lot of people are really interested in. So I want to basically ask the question of everyone, how is it going to occur here in North America for our smartphones to either have an ATSC 3.0 tuner embedded in them, if that's in the cards, or if there's some kind of accessory product. I just got back from the Sinclair press conference, and they're showing a ATSC 3.0 tuner that's a USB-C dongle, which is an interesting way of doing that. And I know, Bonnie, you've done a lot of work on that. You've got something on the board, so to speak, that's really interesting. So why don't you tell everybody about the is it still the quarterback?
Yes.
Okay.
So Airwaves is the inventor of Quarterback. Quarterback is a cell phone accessory with an extra battery that also has an ATSC 3 antenna, tuner, and DMOD in it. And the idea is that if you've got an existing cell phone that you don't plan on replacing sometime soon, this is a antenna that also functions as a kickstand. So the idea is you've got ATSC 3 TV on your mobile phone. You do not need a SIM card. You do not need wireless access. It's straight from TV towers. So we're building a mobile accessory for mobile phones called Quarterback, and if you go to quarterback.airwaves.tv, you'll be able to go and see that product, and we'll have that product ready as soon as we can, hopefully this year.
Good. And yeah, I think that's really interesting, but I also wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the idea that there might be a 3.0 tuner inside of smartphones and handsets in North America, which I know there are a lot of people that are skeptical about that, and some of the ways that it could happen would be making a deal with a provider to offload some video for more efficiency. What do you have to say about that, John?
Pretty complicated. There's experience in Korea. For some 15 years, there's been mobile television there on handset called TDMB. So we know how to make receivers with a little antenna that are going to be able to receive over-the-air television. Actually, broadcasters in Korea are anxious to gravitate to ATSC 3 in the near future. That's all well and good because we'll be able to build the devices. It's more complicated in the U.S., especially now with 5G starting to take hold this year, the expected launch of video services on 5G. This is where broadcasters and wireless carriers and set makers, handset makers like ourselves, need to come together to try to find a business model that works. One would argue that doing video with 5G is going to eat up a lot of battery. You'll need her device with the extra battery in it. ATSC 3, on the other hand, is very, very efficient, and we're able to maintain our battery life a little longer. So, for certain video applications, we think ATSC 3 and data applications for that matter, with the one-to-many architecture of broadcasting, makes perfect sense and can be complementary with the wireless carrier services.
Yeah,
John?
and the size of phones, we want phones to be thinner and smaller and no bezel and so forth. So asking to put anything else, and our batteries need to last longer. So asking to put anything else in a phone is a tough ask. However, if consumers want it, we're going to deliver it. So what Bonnie's doing with the quarterback device, this is a great way, without integrating it into the phone, to prove the market, to prove the business case, to prove that that's what the consumers want. And if so, you'll see it happen. So, it's one of those, stay tuned, we'll see what happens, but I don't expect it to happen in the near term.
If I could just add one more thing, well said, John. We think advanced emergency information is going to be really important to help drive receivers into mobile devices. The A-Warn Alliance is here. They're doing rich multimedia emergency alerting, not to replace the old EAS system, but to supplement it, to have live video and evacuation maps. And we're not looking for a mandate by any means, but these are this is almost motherhood and apple pie for the wireless carriers. If you were here this morning and heard the big announcement of the 40 stations, Commissioner Brendan Carr from the FCC was talking about the important role that broadcasters play in emergencies and the very important role that the advanced emergency information system within the ATSC 3 standard will deliver. And that, I think, is maybe the silver bullet to help get more receivers into handsets.
Okay. I want to move to another mobile topic, which is the vehicular receivers. And John, you may be able to illuminate us a little bit about some of the activity that's going on with Harman. But for vehicular receivers, and again, this is kind of a long play, because when you put new technology into an automobile system, it's a long R&D road, because it takes so long to develop and get that into vehicles. But we're talking about, perhaps backseat entertainment type things, but also telematics and downloads and that kind of thing. And I know that there is an MOU, I believe. So can you tell us a little bit about what a vehicular receiver might be like with an ATSC 3 platform?
Yeah, there are really two classes. There's the one that the consumer would know about and the one that the consumer wouldn't know about. The one the consumer would know about relates to the MOU Myra mentioned. So it's CES, Harman Kardon, which is a subsidiary of Samsung, made an announcement along with Sinclair and SK Telecom about working on ATSC 3.0 for entertainment to cars. So I can't really talk about where that's gone since that announcement. I don't think we've made any subsequent announcements yet, but that's on the home entertainment side, or the in-vehicle entertainment side, I should say. And so so that would be what the consumer is aware about. What the consumer isn't aware about is the side of getting data into the cars, whether it be a firmware update, mapping, stuff for self-driving cars, and the manufacturers want to be able to deliver that data to every one of their owners cost effectively. So if they can put an antenna that does 5G and Wi-Fi and ATSC 3.0, then they can figure out how best to deliver that data to the vehicles to get 100% coverage.
Right, and isn't that kind of an efficiency play? The selling of that is it's going to cost you less to get that data to the car or the consumer because it's a broadcast technology.
Exactly. So first they need to put the receiver and antenna in the car, and then they need to figure out when it's cost effective to use it, but the consumer won't know. This will be invisible, it'll just work.
That's sort of the B2B aspect of ATSC 3 in many ways. And I have to give a plug for the ATSC and President Mark Richer, who's been driving this area literally. There's a new group called the Automotive Planning Team within the ATSC that's doing a lot of really good work, working arm in arm with the automotive manufacturers. I've been drinking from a fire hose, learning about a lot of this stuff. For instance, I didn't realize that the 2022, as you alluded to, the 2022 cars are already set. We're having discussions right now about the automobiles that'll be on the market in 2023. Now, it's critical for them to have a nationwide footprint of this new broadcast system. And as we heard this morning, that's coming really fast. And if you look ahead to 2023, I believe ATSC 3 will be ubiquitous in the United States. And that's something that will really help in our discussions with the automotive community. Your point is really well taken. This is a very cost-effective way to deliver data to whether it's to the moving vehicle or non-real time when it's parked at night, to update the navigation, to update the telematics, to adjust the sensors. And we haven't even touched on autonomous vehicles. Then they're going to fit into all of this. The massive amount of data that's going to be required can be delivered in very effective ways with ATSC 3.
Yeah, and if we're talking about autonomous vehicles, we're talking about getting things done in real time, 24/7 basically. Yeah. So I want to move on, unless, Bonnie, did you have anything to say about the vehicular? Okay.
I think that both John and John said it very, very well. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about timelines, and I want to ask, especially the TV manufacturers here, I'm assuming that you have a checklist somewhere that says, you know, here are the things that we want to see happen before we start shipping TVs into the North American market in a significant way. It may have to, obviously would have something to do with how much broadcasting is happening, but there are other things as well. And so, John from Samsung, we have too many Johns here. Would you start off telling me what? Oh, John without the H, yes.
Exactly.
Would you start off by telling us kind of what at Samsung is the checklist, so to speak? Where do we need to go?
Yeah, I think my answer will be the same as for the other TV manufacturers, in fact, all the receiver manufacturers. The key is robustness. We need to have products that simply work, that the consumer can plug in, turn on, and you're not going to want to reboot it. You're not going to want to do new firmware updates. We want it to be right. And so there's a group, once again, in ATSC, another one of the implementation teams, the conformance implementation team, working on testing. So we're working very hard to get test streams, test assertions, and so forth, so that we can make sure that you plug it in, it works, and no crashes, no reboots, and all the features are there. Not only today, but as the broadcasters introduce more features in the future.
And would you say that the activity that is happening in the Phoenix test is toward that goal? Is that what you guys are doing kind of on an ongoing basis with your
It's
receivers?
absolutely related. Although maybe one of our biggest challenges there is if you get a test stream off the Phoenix stick or any of the sticks in the U.S., somebody probably owns copyright to the content. So yeah, if anyone here wants to donate content for testing, please let us know, because yeah, it's always good to have good content, 4K, HDR, and so forth, but with not just that's copyright free, but with a contract that says you may use this, and so that's one of the challenges we have.
Well, that's one of the things on our checklist, and I don't want to be the skunk at the picnic here, but as we look ahead to introducing product in 2020, content protection is going to be key. The good news is there are some great discussions that have been going on for a good 9 months now among the major broadcast networks and the station groups and the manufacturers. The NAB's involved, the Consumer Technology Association's involved. There's a lot of people working really hard, but we're going to have to lock and load on our product designs by the middle of this year to be ready for introducing in 2020. So that's one of the gating factors that kind of keeps me up at night.
So in terms of content protection, can anyone here kind of illuminate for us how that's different from content protection that we might have in today's sets? I mean, I assume that the concern is that you've got 4K UHD pristine pictures and audio and a lot more sophisticated ways to hack into it. So
Refer to you guys with engineering degrees.
yeah.
Yeah, so we've already got that right now with online delivery. When you're connected to the internet, you can get licenses. Of course, the consumer, once again, is completely unaware. It just, you subscribe to your service, you click on a movie you want to watch, and there it is, 4K, HDR, whatever. The challenge for broadcast is you may have someone in the middle of Montana who doesn't connect their TV to the internet, so it's got to be pre-installed certificates that go out and just work for the next decade plus. So that TV might never get connected back to the internet. So it's that type of planning that needs to be taken care of up front. Now it's tough enough when you're online, but you can do upgrades and so forth and renew keys and licenses. But when you're talking about something that doesn't get connected, it's a single-ended type of content protection.
And so is this a technical problem yet to be solved, or is it more of a implementation of technology?
Yeah, there are technical issues. I believe those are solved, but there are also policy issues of what happens if this goes wrong, what happens if that goes wrong. And you got multiple players. You have the content providers, you've got the receiver manufacturers, and you've got the supplier of the content protection technology too. So getting all the policy things right, all the negotiations done, that's as good a challenge as any technology, as usual.
Okay, all right. And so that's your checklist, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Bonnie, do you have a checklist of things that you need to see happen in the market before you make more of those red zone receivers or quarterback devices?
So the Red Zone receiver is a professional device, and it's being used by broadcasters. What we're trying to do is to build devices that help broadcasters roll out and launch ATSC 3 commercially. So our product is designed specifically for television broadcasters and software developers that work in broadcast to get ATSC 3 on the air as fast as possible. And then we'll go to a consumer device. So we'll move into the consumer area. So we're trying really hard to get ATSC 3 on the air, and then we'll get consumer devices. Those will happen actually in tandem. The thing I want to mention is broadcasters must get a dense network, which means SFNs need to go on the air. They need to have more than just one big tower. They need to have a dense network so that you can use and access ATSC 3 literally everywhere.
one other thing on the checklist, and John alluded to it earlier, but I think it deserves emphasizing again. When we're introducing a consumer product through a nationwide retailer, and we learned this back in the days of trying to do the mobile and handheld standard when there just wasn't enough broadcasting. We're in a chicken and egg mode. I don't know if I'm the chicken or the egg, but the time is going to come when there is, and we're seeing the momentum here at the show, when we have this critical mass of broadcasting out there, then that gives us as a manufacturer and our retail partners the confidence to move forward.
Okay, that's it on your checklist? Oh, well, that's simple, right? So I also want to talk a little bit about the role of devices when we start moving into transition. So at first we'll have simulcasting, kind of a complicated setup, but we'll have simulcasting in 1.0 and 3.0. And eventually we're going to, be in a position where we'll be able to do 3.0. What is your vision of what kind of transitional devices that there might be? I mean, or are they even necessary? I mean, we could have a HDMI dongle that has 3.0 and it's plugged into a 1.0 machine and or TV. I mean, what's your vision of what that might look like in a few years?
Right. So I think Bonnie's Airwaves products are a perfect example of transitionary products. So anyone with an existing television or existing device and they want to see ATSC 3.0 signals, that's great. The advantage of going to an integrated television is that not everybody is as technically adept. Not everybody else is an AV aficionado. So at my home, my wife wants to pick up the remote control, turn it on, and hit channel up. And so having that integrated television experience where that you hit channel up and you're on the NBC station, but you don't know if it's 1.0 or 3.0. If it's 3.0 and it just tunes, that's great. And all of a sudden you have HDR, 4K advanced audio. Hey, an app came up that I can select. That's wonderful. It makes it easy for everyone to use without having to reach for the other remote, turn the other thing on, go to HDMI 2, and so forth. So being able to have it just work seamlessly is great. I know there are people who would, I think some of the set-top box, if you tune to channel 4, it's your main broadcast in NTSC. Channel 704 on the was the digital one. And so many people said, yeah, I know that one looks better, but I'm just going to hit channel up. So integrated is going to be what the mass market, I think, wants.
Yeah, so what I would say about the evolution of ATSC3 is you're going to see devices that make it easy to use. So what we're doing is a USB dongle. You plug it into a Windows laptop. We have an app that runs on the laptop, and you get television broadcast. But it comes with a really long retractable antenna. It's almost 2 feet long. That's a little impractical in this day and age. So I think part of the evolution of what we're going to see are antennas becoming more beautiful. They're going to become more elegant, more integrated, and as the networks become more dense, then the big antennas won't be necessary. And then you're going to see television move into vehicles. You'll see it move on to mobile phones, and eventually you're going to see a nice blending of 5G broadcast and ATSC3. I think you're going to see those devices sooner than later.
If we compare this to the last transition, and believe it or not, June 19th of 2009, 10 years ago, was the analog shutoff. So we've come a long way. John alluded to it earlier. The analog to digital is a different animal than a digital to digital. And we don't anticipate the need for government-funded coupons or converter boxes. That this voluntary marketplace approach is going to drive a lot of receivers into the market. Broadcasters and manufacturers need to work together to promote to consumers why they should get excited about buying these new television sets. But to your earlier question, there's going to be lots of other devices in addition to the dongles and the integrated receivers. We're going to see gateways. We call ours a networked antenna. It's a steerable antenna that doesn't even need to be anywhere near the TV because it actually will redistribute ATSC 3 throughout your house via Wi-Fi. So all of your smart TVs, all of your tablets, your mobile phones, anything that's Wi-Fi capable, you don't need a tuner in it because this one device in your home, as long as you're in your home, will be able to deliver the ATSC 3 programming.
Yeah, we really didn't even talk about gateways, but that is probably one of the most interesting new features for in-home viewing is the gateway, and the gateway doesn't necessarily have to just have an ATSC 3 tuner in it. It could have all kinds of different receivers in it, and it just sends out the signals over Wi-Fi in your home. So, John, do you have something else to add? No. So, the last thing I have is just basically kind of more on the timeline. So it sounds to me like everyone here agrees that next year is when we're going to see, except for Bonnie may be a little bit ahead of us. She may have something maybe late.
I think
this year.
so.
Yeah. But it's going to be 2020 when we start seeing real consumer receivers. Will we see those sets at the Consumer Electronics Show in January? Anybody have any announcements they want to make about that?
Well, I would say show up, come back to Las Vegas. I didn't mention I'm the chair of the Television Manufacturers Caucus in CTA, so I'm sure putting out the plug for CTA's CES show is helpful there. But we're not making any announcements right now, so but come at CES, and I'm sure there will be a lot to see here.
I'll put in my plug as the chairman of the video division at CTA, and yes, do come to CES. It is highly likely that you're going to see ATSC 3 receivers. This is not an official LG announcement, but on behalf of CTA, we expect that CES 2020 will be the launch pad.
And another question that I do have has to do with kind of the promotional end of these things, and maybe John, you might be best to answer that. But we start seeing sets come out. What's the mechanism within these different organizations to get the word out about what's so great about this new next generation TV system?
I think there's an effort underway at CTA to look at how this is going to be branded, how ATSC 3.0 is something we all are very familiar with in the industry. Does it really mean anything? Does next gen TV really mean anything to consumers? So there's a big effort out there industry wide about how the consumer facing messaging will come together in the next 6 months before the show. Our goal is to have very clear industry nomenclature by the time we get to CES. But in terms of the promotion, the broadcasters, it's in broadcasters' interest to promote their service, and that in turn will drive people into stores to buy the sets.
Yeah, I would say that the national effort by television broadcasters to not only promote television but to promote this new packet data technology is key and central. And how we're promoting it is we're saying this is a brand new gargantuan pipe, right? Riding next to wireless in one of the best spectrums out there, UHF and VHF. So the way that we're advertising it is, let's ride this big pipe, this pipe that people can use. It's going to have data on it.
Yeah, and I would say if you're going to do something new that needs promotion, partnering with the broadcasters, you can't do any better than that.
Those are the two sets of people that are going to benefit from it. So yeah, makes sense. If anybody has any questions, we're getting close to our allotted time. But if someone has any questions that they'd like to ask, yes, sir.
Actually, I got three real quick ones. How do you see the 5G? Oh, I'm sorry. How do you see the 5G television experiment that's going on about with using broadcast over 5G. Where do you see that going? I know that Rhodes Schwartz is doing something with it, but where do you see that going?
So I'll answer that, and then I'd like to hear your answers as well, for sure. So 5G uses millimeter wave technology, which is a very close proximity technology. So the way to get 5G working is to make sure that you have lots of base stations in a very small, close proximity. The value of television broadcast is that it goes a very long distance and can serve millions of subscribers at the same time. So the capacity and the reach of television is unparalleled. So the way I would look at it is I would say these are two different models of how to get data to customers. And 5G is one way with a proximity, I would say, limitation. Television has a limitation of getting SFNs on the network, right? Transitioning from ATSC 1 to ATSC 3.
Yeah, and I have a similar view, which is that these are complementary technologies in that you've got ATSC 3.0 can do the delivery to a huge market quickly, and but it's not one-to-one. You're not getting, you're not able to just subscribe to the TV station or the TV program that you'd like. 5G is going to be more effective at unicast as a one-to-one to the consumer. So put the two together and it's really, really powerful.
Ditto.
Ditto. That's, we can probably end on ditto, I think. But before we do, please.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
The other thing is, you mentioned a lot of people. I have stations in VHF and UHF transmitters. A lot of people are saying that VHF is on its way out, and you mentioned that it's a good frequency. So, I mean, do you see there's a future for VHF in the consumer electronics television version of this? How are you?
Absolutely. VHF, our products are all UHF and VHF accessible, right? So 50 megahertz to 1 gigahertz, and we're supporting that spectrum, no problem.
And just one more question. The dual channel ability, the dual capability at 1.0 and 3.0, do you see that coming out at the beginning, and will it be seamless? And how long is there going to be a taper out period as you see it as manufacturers that's going to sunset at some point?
Absolutely. The chips that we have right now are dual chips, ATSC 1 and 3, and they will continue that way for a long time until one goes away.
And I'll say ditto.
Okay. Well, we can still end on ditto, right? Okay. Well, please thank our panelists for the excellent information, and we're looking forward to seeing your devices very soon.